doctor in Arkansas. He is seeking your support in his race for the Republican nomination for the presidency. And he's got a prescription for what ails America. Let's make Dr. Ben Carson feel welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Well, Candy, my wife, and I are so happy to be here with you today on this beautiful day all the time. But here's what you need to notice. There's a whole lot of people trying to get in here and nobody trying to escape. So there's no heads down here. What does that tell you? And, you know, what a wonderful place it has been for me. Really a land of dreams. And it didn't always look that way. I remember as a 9-year-old sitting on the ghetto stairs in Boston after having moved from Detroit after my parents were divorced. Because my mother, who was one of 24 children, got married at age 13 and they moved from rural Tennessee to Detroit. She discovered her husband was a bigamist and she had to take care of us by herself, and we ended up moving to Boston to live with her older sister and brother-in-law in a typical tenement. And everything that you would associate with that, rats and roaches and sirens and gangs and murders and dire poverty. There was never money for anything. I remember sometimes we would get these coupons so that you could get into the state fair for free. And we were so excited to go to the state fair, but there was never any money to get on any of the rides or to buy any popcorn. I never tasted cotton candy until I was an adult, and it wasn't that good. But you know, everything looks great when you can't have it. But you know, the fact of the matter is, my mother was just so incredibly thrifty. And she worked so hard. She would leave at 5 in the morning, get back after midnight, working job after job after job, scrubbing floors, cleaning toilets. She did not like the ideal of welfare because she noticed that no one she ever saw go on it came off of it, and she didn't want to be dependent on other people. So she was going to work as long and as hard as necessary. She occasionally accepted some aid, but for the most part was able to stay off of it. And she never felt sorry for herself, which was a good thing. The problem is she never felt sorry for us either. So there was never any excuse that we could give that was acceptable to her. She would always say, do you have a brain? And if the answer was yes, then you could have thought your way out of it. And you know, that was probably the most important thing she did for me and for my brother. Teach us not to make excuses. Because see, if you can find an excuse for something, then you can wallow in the excuse. You don't have to do anything. And you know, that's not what made America into a great nation. You know, early on, you know, those settlers, those pioneers, they had a very rough go of it. This was a rugged and hostile terrain. And they moved from one sea to the other sea across that. Why? Because they had what's known as the can-do attitude. And they know how to build roads and structurally sound bridges and containment facilities and dams. They knew how to invent things when there was a problem. They didn't sit around complaining about not having something. And you see, this is what we must do here in America once again. And that is not to say that we should not have compassion for people who are not doing well. Because in our society, there's an increasing number of people not doing well. Have you noticed that? I'll tell you why that is. Because there are those who want to fundamentally change our society. And they want the, quote, utopian society, unquote, where nobody has to worry about anything from cradle to grave. You just turn over everything to the government. The government knows best, and they will take care of you. Here's the problem. Here's the problem with those utopian societies. It's not that we are the first ones to be thinking about that. There have been others. They all end up looking exactly the same, with a small group of elites at the top who control everything, a rapidly vanishing middle class, and a vastly expanded dependent class. That's exactly the direction that we are moving in. That is not who America is. And we cannot let that happen. And there are others who say, yeah, but look at this country, look at that. They're all like that. Let them be like that. They're not us. This is America. And we are different. Have you noticed that there is such a thing as the American way? There's not the British way. There's not the French way or the Italian way. There's the American way. And have you noticed that you can be un-American? You can't be un-Canadian or un-Brazilian. We have our own unique culture. We are unique people. And let's not forget about it. And let's also not forget that part of our foundation is our Judeo-Christian heritage. And those people who spend so much time and effort trying to get God out of our lives, they need to recognize that the very first amendment to our Constitution is freedom of religion. People have a right. People have a right to live by their religious convictions. It doesn't say freedom from religion. It says freedom of religion. And if we lose that, and if we continue to throw away the values and principles that made us great for the sake of political correctness, we will go down just as quickly as we rose to the pinnacle. And it's going to be up to us to stop that from happening. Now, one of the things that my mother recognized early on is that we were not doing well academically. And she didn't know what to do. So she prayed. And she asked God to give her wisdom. And that's the wonderful thing about God. You don't have to have a PhD to talk to Him. All you have to do is have faith. And she had the faith that He would show her the way. And you know what? He did. He gave her the wisdom. At least in her opinion. My brother and I didn't think it was that wise. I mean, turning off the TV, what kind of wisdom is that? As far as we were concerned, that was child abuse. But to compound the problem, she said we had to read 2 books apiece from the Detroit Public Libraries every single week and submit to her written book reports, which she couldn't read, but we didn't know that. And she would put check marks and highlights and underlines, and we would think she was reading them, but she wasn't. But I really was unhappy. Everybody else was outside playing and having a good time. There I was stuck in the house reading books. I was most disgruntled. But, after a while, I actually started to enjoy reading the books. Because I was starting to know stuff that nobody else knew. And, they used to call me the dummy. I remember there was this one kid. He was the smartest kid in the class. He would always come up to you after a test and hold his test in front of your face and let you see his A. And he'd say, let me see yours, let me see yours. You wanted to let him see it all right, but, you couldn't do that. But, as I started reading, I started learning stuff. Within the space of a year and a half, I went from the bottom of the class to the top of the class, much to the consternation of all those students who used to laugh at me. And I remember going up to Steve after a test, and I said, Steve, how'd you do on the test? And he stuck out his chest. He says, oh, I got a 91. And I said, well, gee, that's too bad. Oh, I got 100. And I said, next time if you need help, let me know. Now, that was perhaps a little obnoxious, but it sure felt good to say that to that turkey. But you know what happened? What happened is I had a complete revolution in my thinking about who I was. I didn't have a brain transplant, but I had a revolution in the way that I looked at things, in the way that I approached things. And that's what we are going to have to do in this country once again. We are going to have to begin to think of things differently. You know, in 30 states, at least 30 states, you can collect more from government benefits than you can from working a minimum wage job. And a lot of people say, why should I work if I can collect all these benefits? Well, you know, in the old days, there was a very different attitude. People used to say, I'm taking the minimum wage job because I will learn skills, I will meet people, I will get opportunities, I will climb the ladder, and a year later, I'm going to be much better off than the person accepting those benefits. That's the thinking that needs to come back today to America. And one of the reasons that's so important is because we don't have unlimited money to give away. You know, our national debt is right around $18.5 trillion. That's a lot of money. Trillion? I mean, we can say it, but can you even comprehend what that number means? I mean, if you try to pay it back at a rate of $10 million a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, it would take 5,000 years. And that is what we are putting on the backs of our young people. Which is 74,000 pages long. It's got all these regulations and rules and just stupid stuff that we don't need to have. And, you know, when the Boston Tea Party occurred, you know, they were upset about a tax rate that was less than 5%. They would stroke out if they could be here and see what we were doing. It is absolutely absurd. And it's something that I personally think should be simplified. And I like what the Bible says. The Bible talks about a tithe, and that was created by God, and it seems like he's a pretty fair guy. You know, he didn't say if your crops fail, you don't owe me a tithe. He didn't say if you have a bumper crop, you owe me triple tithe. So there must be something inherently fair about proportionality. You make $10 billion a year, you pay $1 billion. You make $10 a year, you pay $1. You get the same rights and privileges. How is that unfair? You have to get rid of all the deductions and all the loopholes to make it fair so that some people don't get advantages and others don't. But you know, there's a lot of people in our society today who say, that's not fair. The guy who made $10 billion, he's still got $9 billion left. We need to take more of his money. You know what that's called, don't you? Socialism. Okay? Socialism never creates wealth for the society. It only creates wealth for a certain number of people. What made America great was that we had just the opposite attitude. We said, that guy who put in $1 billion because he made 10, let's create an environment that's even more conducive to his success so that next year he can make $20 billion and put $2 billion in the pot. That's how we grew. That's how we did it. And then there are those on the other end who say, wow, but the guy who made $10, he can't afford to put one of those dollars in the pot. Of course he can. He can ride on the public roads. His kids can go to the public schools. He can put $1 in the pot. But I'll tell you something. I grew up as one of those very poor people. And I'll tell you a secret. Poor people also have pride. Poor people also have dignity. They don't want you to pat them on the head and say, there, you poor little thing. I'm going to take care of all your needs. That doesn't work. What they would prefer is that we fix the economy and create a ladder so that they can climb up through their own hard work and become part of the fabric of the strength of America. And that's what we have to once again begin to create in this country. Also, remember, if everybody is part of the tax structure, then the politicians can't do what they love to do, which is raise taxes. It's easy to raise taxes on 1% or 2% or 5%. It's real hard to raise it on 100%. And that's why we have to begin to stress once again the whole concept of liberty and justice for all. That means we treat everybody the same in this country. Nobody is special. It's one of the reasons that I have steadfastly stayed away from special interest groups and from billionaires who want to influence your campaign. I do not want to deal with those people. I will not deal with them. You know, and the pundits have said you can't run a national campaign. It's impossible. You'll never be able to generate the funds that you need to do that. But they forgot about one important thing: the American people. They forgot about the people. And from the people, we have received hundreds of thousands of donations. Amen. And we don't have to worry about that as long as the people are behind us, because I think that the only special interest group is the American people. And that's what we have to remember. We must also recognize that we, the people, are not each other's enemies. Right. There are those who are always trying to stir up trouble. They are always trying to drive wedges between us. And, you know, they tell you that there's a war on women. There is no war on women. There may be a war on what's inside of women, but there is no war on women in this country. And every incident that involves people of different races, they try to make into a big racial incident. Let me tell you a secret. You take any community, there's going to be conflicts between the people in that community. And if some of them happen to be of different races, there's still going to be conflicts between people. That is the nature of people. But what we need to understand in this country is that we're all in the same boat. You know, go to Ellis Island and take a look at that museum. On the wall, you'll see pictures of people who came here from every part of the world. In many cases, with all their earthly belongings in their two hands. People who worked not 5 days a week, but 6 days or 7 days a week. Not 8 hours a day, but 10, 12 hours a day. No such thing as a minimum wage. But they work not for themselves, but so that their sons and daughters and grandsons and granddaughters might have an opportunity in this land. And hundreds of years before that, other immigrants came here involuntarily in the bottom of slave ships, worked even longer, even harder for less. But they too had a dream that one day their great-grandsons and great-granddaughters might pursue freedom and prosperity in this land. And do you know, of all the nations in the world, this one, the United States of America, is the only one big enough and great enough to allow all of those people from all of those backgrounds to remember their dreams. We are all culturally relevant to each other, and that's why we're called the United States of America. And all of those people who are trying to drive wedges between us, they are the enemy. Yes. They are not our friends. We must learn to recognize them and not allow them to manipulate us. You know, the key is not to agree on everything, because we don't all, if you want to see somebody, if you want a candidate who agrees with you on everything, go look in the mirror. Because that's about the only place you're going to find them, you know? The fact of the matter is, if two people agree about everything, one of them isn't necessary. So what we need to do instead is learn to have rational discussions. You know, if you disagree with your neighbor, why don't you sit down and talk about it? You'll frequently find that you're not nearly as far apart. Have you ever noticed before people get divorced, they stop talking? The next thing you know, their spouse is the devil incarnate. That's what happens when you stop talking. And, you know, the problems that face us as a nation right now, I got to tell you a secret. They are not Democrat problems. They are not Republican problems. They are American problems. And we as Americans have to solve those problems. We cannot allow the forces that be to continue to destroy this nation. If I were trying to destroy this nation and I was in charge, let me tell you what I would do. I would drive wedges between the people. I would have a war on women and race wars and income wars and age wars and religious wars, and any place I could drive a wedge, I'd be driving it to distract people and to divide and conquer. And then I would be driving the debt to unimaginable levels. I would be inviting people in here from other countries. I'd be putting them on benefits. I'd be giving them free phones. I'd be trying to get people involved in every kind of social program that I possibly could so that I could stabilize the financial structure of the country. I would be trying to weaken the military and demoralize the military while our enemies were growing stronger and stronger all over the world, and the jihadists were infiltrating our country. I would not be protecting our borders. I would not harden the electrical grid. I wouldn't be worried about cyber warfare. I would destroy our space program so that others could get control of space and have a dominant position over the world. That's what I would do. Any resemblance to what's going on is purely coincidental. But you know what? We can fix it. Okay? You know why? Because we are the American people. And we have the can-do attitude. And there is virtually nothing that we can't do if we put our minds to it. And if we work together and stop trying to destroy each other and stop fighting each other. The power that we have is virtually unimaginable. And I want you to know that this is an exceptional country. You know, 100 years before we came on the scene, 500 years, 1,000 years, 5,000 years, people did things the same way. Within 200 years of the advent of America, men were walking on the moon. Don't tell me this is not an exceptional nation. It changed the trajectory of the entire world. And the other thing about this nation is that it is the child of every other nation. So we have a stake in the welfare of every other nation. We are the natural leaders of the world. And when we back off of our leadership position, adventurism begins to occur on behalf of many others. And we create a lot more problems than we solve when we back away from our leadership responsibilities. You look at what's going on with the global jihadists right now. Some people say, no, we can't get involved in what's going on in the Middle East. We made a big mistake in 2003. We lost a lot of people. We lost a lot of money. Let's just keep our noses out of it. That is a very immature attitude, because in 2003, Saddam Hussein was not an existential threat to this country. The radical jihadists are an existential threat. They are going to grow until someone stops them. They want to destroy us, our way of life, and Israel. And we have two choices. We can let them continue to grow, drop a few bombs in the desert and say we're doing something, or we can use every resource known to us, covert and overt, banking, everything, and we can destroy them first. That's what we need to do. And, you know, we need to build up our military. We have the smallest Navy since 1970. The smallest Air Force since 1940. You know, so many of our generals have prematurely retired because they don't want to be part of this. The sequester cuts the heart out of the personnel. Lieutenant colonels, captains, majors getting letters every month, don't re-enlist. You know, the morale is so low. 14% down on recruiting for a volunteer Army force. We're treating our veterans like we don't know them. I mean, there's so much stuff that is going on. It is absolute craziness. And one of the first things that would be done in a Carson administration is we will once again have the strongest military that anybody and that, quite frankly, is how we avoid war. You will not avoid war by being weak. You will encourage war to come. Now, some people say, yeah, but how are you going to pay for all that? Guess what? There is so much waste in our government. It is unbelievable. And, you know, I have spent decades sitting on corporate boards. And I know a lot about how efficiency works. And there are certain types of programs that we use to turn around companies. You apply those same kind of techniques to our federal government, you're going to see massive savings. We also have to bring personal responsibility to government. If people are not doing their jobs, they have to be fired. End of story. And because the government works for us. We don't work for them. And they need to understand that very quickly. You know, thousands of people retire in the government every year. Don't replace them. Just shift people around. We'll get it down to a reasonable size. There are so many things that we can do. You know, I've written about them. I will continue to write about them and talk about them. Hopefully get a chance during the next debate to actually talk about them. But here's the assignment I want to leave you with. Every single person here has a sphere of influence. You have your family, your extended family, your neighbors, your co-workers, your friends, and you have influence over them. In 2012, 30 million evangelicals did not vote. 93 million people who could have voted did not vote. You know a lot of those people. And you know, in the pre-revolutionary days, what happened is people were unhappy with King George III, and they came in and they had town meetings, and they talked about what kind of country did you want to pass on to your children and your grandchildren? What were you willing to fight for? What were you willing to die for? And they encouraged each other, and that's how a ragtag bunch of militiamen defeated the most powerful empire on earth. We have that same ability to get people to start talking about what are they willing to die for? What do they think America stands for? What are they willing to stand up for? Because freedom is not free. And you have to fight for it every single day. And now the fight is our fight. Let us fight to make it one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.